So good evening. So it's my pleasure heartily welcoming our distinguished guest, Dr. M.L. Kantarao garu, Dr. Yerram Raj garu and Professor Manohar Rao garu. I request Kumari Priyanka to present a floral bouquet to Professor M.L. Kantarao garu. I request Kumari Swati to present a floral bouquet to Dr. Yerram Raj garu. Now Kumari Sashavani will present a bouquet to Professor Manohar Rao garu. Today, we are very honored that three distinguished economists of the city, they are with us, and we are extremely grateful to the distinguished guests for sparing their valuable time for participating in today's panel discussion. I think you know the theme, the growth story of India, and the challenges ahead. The guests, we have also specified a specific item on which they have to speak. I think you know the theme, how relevant it is for today. I think India is recognized by the world countries as a major economy in the last decade. I think next decade is very crucial for India because how the India's growth story is going to be in the next few decades. And India has a very good opportunity to become the major world economic power, whether it will be capable of utilizing its strength or squander its strength, we do not know. It all depends on the leadership and the governance and the citizens of the country in which direction they are going to take it. With regard to growth, there are two views among the economists. The most optimistic view is that India would be able to achieve a double-digit growth for next 2 to 3 decades, just like China, which started its reforms 14 years ahead. And the present $16 per annum per capita would be enhanced to around $8,000 to $10,000 per head per annum by 2025, according to some economists, if it continues a sustained growth rate of 8 to 9%. There is also a pessimistic view about this growth story, that growth should not be taken for granted, and especially the South Asian region facing big transformation, and there are several challenges ahead, like poverty. I think India has the world's largest poor people, having more than 300 million poor people in the country, which is a major challenging task for India to grapple with in future. Apart from that, the problem of urbanization, proliferation of slums. I think the urban population of India has grown up more than 30%. When India became independent, the urban population was just 15%. That means just 5 crores urban population by 1948. But today, the urban population is 33%. That means nearly 40 crore urban people are there. So the urban phenomena is seen all over the world. India is also going to have around 50% urban population by the next 2 decades. So this is a major problem which India will be facing. I think in the world, the migration rate from the rural to urban, the highest is seen in India. So the governments, the local bodies, the governments could not provide adequate infrastructure to the growing population. And also 75% of the rural migrants to urban area, they are poor people. They are rural poor coming to urban areas in search of wage employment, because in rural areas you can't have wage employment 365 days, whereas one can have wage employment for 365 days in urban areas. So to control the migration from the rural area and to provide adequate basic minimum facilities like water, sanitation to the slum dwellers is a major task that is being faced by this country. The bigger the city, the larger the slums. I think Mumbai, with a population of more than 2 crores, nearly 50% of the population, they live in slums. Delhi, with more than 1.5 crores, it's almost the same case. So the bigger the city, the more the slum population, and nobody can do anything at this juncture. If the planning process had taken place in the proper perspective from the beginning of the city formation, this situation would not have occurred. So there are many other problems, the demographic challenges and also the infrastructure problems, both social and physical infrastructure. These are some of the major challenges which India is going to face. These are to be tackled by the governments at different levels. And very recently, the data, the growth data, the base year has been shifted from 2004-05 to 2011-12. So as a result, the growth rates of the last 3 years, there is a slowdown in economy in the last 3 years. It happened in 2008-09 when the entire world was slowed down. But immediately in India, it quickly recovered with a V-shaped curve in 2009-10 and 2010-11. And again from 2011-12 onwards, there is a slowdown in economy. So with the new data, the growth rates slightly, they have increased. So there are contradictions about it. For 2013-14, initially it was estimated at 4.7% growth rate with 2004-05 base year. Now that has been revised to 6.9% with the revised base year. Maybe this is an initial estimate. By March 31st and later also, there will be revised and re-revised estimates. They are going to come. This will also affect many other macroeconomic indicators. So these are some of the problems which the governments are going to deal with regarding growth, and especially the recent data, also the sustained high growth rate is very important for achieving good results. The sustained high growth rate is possible by 3 factors. That is, one is low inflation, the another is low current account deficit, and the third one is fiscal deficit at a manageable levels. If these 3 economic indicators are monitored properly, the growth will have some meaning in future. So for the past three years, the inflation was very high. Only from October 2014 onwards, it has come down to lower levels, and now the consumer price index is around 5%. So again, current account deficiency was also very huge, but for the last 1.5 years, thanks to Mr. Raghuram Rajan, I think it's also under control. The fiscal deficit, it is yet to be seen. In the last budget, government have promised that it would be able to maintain the 4.1% fiscal deficit, which was presented in the budget by the previous government. But we have yet to see. So the management of these macroeconomic indicators and the stability of the economy are very important for the investments to come. So there are also controversies whether growth is really required, but many economists believe that growth is a must, but growth should be inclusive. So everyone should have an equal opportunity, both poor and everyone in this country should enjoy the fruits of the growth, then only it's meaningful. So there is no meaning in saying that growth is not required, but growth is necessary, but it should be inclusive. That is very important, because if no wealth is created, there are no programs for everybody. I think the flagship programs current year, about 3.8 lakh crores is being spent on flagship programs. This is happening because there is a good growth rate by India, and there is some money to spend on it. So if you have the India, at present it's a 2 trillion economy. At least by 2025, it is estimated if there is 8 to 9%, it can be a $10 trillion economy. So if that happens, India can move from a low-income country to middle-income economy that will help the nation. So these are a few things about the growth. And now, with these brief introductory remarks, I request our guests to speak. Each guest, I request them to take 20 minutes time. And after completion of 3 presentations, it's open to the House for any discussion. Please feel free to ask any question. So now I request Dr. M.L. Kantarao Garu. He was a former professor in SKD University. He was also a member of College Service Commission. He was in the APARD in the Center for Decentralized Planning. His specialization is PRIs and fiscal federalism. He has a vast experience in teaching economics as well as with many of the higher up things, and he is a well-known economist available in Hyderabad, and we are very grateful to him for having been with us and participating, even though his health does not permit. He came all the way to participate in this discussion. I am sure our students will be richly benefited by the participation of Professor M.L. Kantarao Garu. I request him to kindly take the mic and give his presentation.
మీరందరి పురోగమనాన్నే మేము కోరుకుంటున్నాం. వెనక్కుపోకండి, ముందుకు రండి. ఇప్పుడు వెనకబడ్డ వాళ్ళు ఎలా ముందుకు వచ్చేస్తున్నారో, భారతదేశంలో 120 కోట్ల మంది కూడా ఇవంతా బిలియనర్స్కి రిజర్వ్ చేయలేదు. నాట్ ఓన్లీ ముఖేష్ అంబానీ అండ్ అదర్స్. యూ కెన్ బికమ్ అనిల్ అంబానీ ఆర్ ముఖేష్ అంబానీ అండ్ ఆక్యుపై ది ఫ్రంట్. సో there should be a willingness to come forward. That's more important. So if that is there, people can, countries can, villages can, states can come forward. What is federal state? In a federal state, as distinguished from a unitary state, you know, there are 2 or 3 tiers of government. In India also, how many tiers of government were there? 2 or 3? 3. Up to 1990, there were only 2 tiers. You know, the Constitution recognized the 3rd tier only from 73rd and 74th Amendment. So, it is something like this. To start with, there was a grandfather and a son, a central government and state governments, whatever might be the state governments, A, B, C, D, etc., or union government plus 28 plus 6 plus 1, etc. All these things were there. And then, in the beginning, what was happening? The center was dominating. And another thing is, we don't talk about center at all in the Constitution. There is no term like central government in the Constitution. You know, what is the government? Union government. So what happens is, now the pet names become popular names, even though they are not legally correct. Just as the term budget is not there in the Constitution, remember this, the term budget is not there in the Constitution. Similarly, the term center is not there. So it is a union-state financial relations. And the union government was dominating, and the state governments were, in the beginning, rather shy of asking anything. So between 1950s, 70s, and late 70s and early 80s, the states used to listen to the union government, whatever was given, etc., was being taken. But afterwards, in 1980s, the son came of age, and he began to say, why do you always dominate? Why don't you give us independence, fiscal autonomy? Why don't you divest your resources? Why do you concentrate all your resources? Concentration of economic power in the hands of a few is supposed to be to the detriment of the common good, is supposed to be bad even according to the Constitution. So, in 1970s, 80s, Hegde in Karnataka, Ramarao here, and some of these state leaders also began to dominate and began to demand a rightful share in the common pool, divisible pool. And they went to the extent of saying that the center is a myth. You are not there, I am here. That's the type of revolt, if we say, that came up from the younger generation of that time. That means the states began to ask for their rightful share. And then by 1990s, with the 73rd and 74th Amendment, a grandson also was born. That is, panchayats, municipalities, Jilla Parishads, all these things. Now, what does the union government, that is the grandfather, say? I shall give grants, etc., directly to the grandson, not pass on to through the states. But the son says, no, you put them in the consolidated fund of Andhra Pradesh or several other state governments, I shall pass them on. But once that is put in the consolidated fund, the states normally do not part with the resources, and the panchayats are starved of these things. So inclusive growth or fiscal federalism or whatever might be the name, cooperative federalism, etc. In fact, they used to speak about Commonwealth also, you know. And at that time the joke was, there cannot be Commonwealth without wealth for the common man. There cannot be a Commonwealth without wealth for the common man. So similarly here, there cannot be altruistic or cooperative federalism unless the resources are properly distributed. But the whole problem is, I don't know whether I am assuming that you know something about the principles of federal finance. Because the time is short, there should be a division of powers and responsibilities between the different tiers of government. Whatever can best be done at a particular level should be allowed to be done only at that particular level. Whatever can be done at a particular level should be allowed to be done only at that particular level. So, street lighting, village roads, gully roads, etc. can best be done only by panchayats, not by Delhi wala. So what type of planning do we require? Not Delhi planning, Delhi level planning, but gully level planning. So gully level planning, micro level planning is as important as the macro planning. So macro planning may be the prerogative of the union government. Let them talk to Obama or others and all that. The panchayat president need not be involved. But when it's a question of having a road in the village or sideways drains and all these things, who should determine these things? The villagers should do it. So this is the type of fiscal federalism in the sense that means we want the panchayats also to flourish. We want the gully level planning to prosper. And in fact, there is what is called a district planning committees now. According to the Article 244 and all that, there is a district planning committee. This district planning committee is a constitutional body, whereas the planning commission, which has been done away with, has been a creation of only a resolution of the parliament. So it's not a constitutional body. But just as I said, certain terms began to dominate, even though they don't find a place in the constitution. Similarly, this planning commission also, which does not have a constitutional status, began to dominate, and the district planning committees which have a constitutional status, some of you who come from the villages might, or the Jilla Parishads, etc., might be knowing that the district planning committee do not normally meet at all. They meet only for just a few minutes. That too, in the Telangana, out of the 10 districts, 9 districts are BRGF districts, and each of them gets about 25 to 30 crores of rupees. That plan has to be ratified by the district planning committee. For that only, they meet in the sense at the Jilla Parishad's general body meeting, at the end when they were about to leave, someone would say, ZPTCs and all that, there are 30 members of the DPC, district planning committees. They are asked, and 24 are elected from the ZPTCs. 4 are supposed to be experts, and 2 are district collector and Jilla Parishad chairperson. So 30 members is the composition. 4 are supposed to be experts. You know what type of experts are nominated? From Krishna district, a 10th class person was nominated as an expert in planning. Not in other districts, but in a place like Krishna district, where its literacy is supposed to bloom. A 10th class man, I had surveyed the qualifications of some of these DPCs. So that's the type of thing. Of course, in the planning commission also, just as here, there are people who do not know about the nuances of the planning. In the planning commission also, there are several people who do not know what a village is. But they have become rural economy experts by studying in Oxford and all that. And if necessary, they grow a beard, which is a symbol of wisdom and all that. So beardless men here who know the village circumstances and all that, they know what it is. But of course, their powers even to spend those 30 crores of rupees is not properly utilized. So what type of cooperation do you require means? It's not an occasional shaking of hands. It's a cooperative thing. It's an altruism. You survive, we shall also strive. But the whole problem is there are inequalities between different states. And the Thane district of Maharashtra has a population of more than 1 crore. Uttaranchal's population is less than 1 crore. But Thane district does not demand a separate state. Uttaranchal demanded a separate state. Similarly, there are several other states, even in the northeast, which are of the size of a district or whose population is around a few lakhs only. As against Uttar Pradesh, which has got a population of nearly 1/6 of India's population, 20 crores. So nearly 1/6 of the India's population is a state, and with a few lakhs of persons also is a state. Uttaranchal also is a state. Manipur is also a state. Several other states are there, smaller, which are of the size of a district. Just as Monaco king, we were just referring, is also a king. But what type of king is there? He is no better than one of the 4 kings in the playing cards. But he is a king. So that type of inequality is there. When it is there, naturally the center begins to dominate. The center begins to dominate. And when the center begins to dominate, naturally the states, with regard to planning also. Here also, there should be proper planning from the village level. There should be an integrated planning, and there should be a vertical growth. From the village, the plan should come to the mandal, from the mandal to the Jilla Parishad, from the Jilla Parishad to, if there is a regional committee, to the regional committee, and state level to the union government. But what was happening was, we had regional committees in Andhra Pradesh also. I have on record to show that the chairman of the regional committee said, I do not know what plan has been submitted or forwarded by the state government for our own region. He had a ministerial status. He was the chairman of a regional committee, but that's what he said, it's on record. He doesn't know. So that's how ignorance also not only is being exploited, but is allowed to continue. So regional committees, some of these things, therefore what is happening is, even though in theory we talk about cooperation and all that, now for the last few months we are listening to certain statements like, all states are equal, all men are equal, but they are always, all men are born equal and free, but they are always in chains. So similarly here, there are constraints. So even though we are supposed to be free, our freedom is to the extent that has been permitted by the powers that be. And that powers that be need not necessarily be always constitutional powers. Supra-constitutional powers also are administering this country, or sometimes the states and all that, or even the Jilla Parishads. In fact, if the Jilla Parishad chairperson is a woman, the person behind her is a man. He is the man, of course, because she has the seat has been reserved to her. She is sitting in the chair. And in fact, there was a cartoon in one of the newspapers, nomination and domination. That is, a person comes to file the nomination in a SC or a weak individual of a village. The seat has been reserved. He has to file the nomination. He will be blinking, or he will be peeping through the window there, and the village head comes and sits before the returning officer, and he is the man who files the nomination on behalf of that particular. You have seen also a cinema by Rajendra Prasad as Panchayat President and all that. I suppose you know the cinemas, and you can better understand the type of Panchayat Sarpanch's freedom. And that poor woman will be peeping through when this man is trying to dominate. So nomination is hers, domination is by this individual. So just as all these people now talk about what we call Emi Takkuvamma Neeku Rajyamelanu ani, వీళ్ళంతా పాపులర్ సాంగ్స్ కొన్ని ఉన్నాయి, చూచారు కదా. నాకు ఏమి తక్కువ రాజ్యమేలడానికి అనేటువంటి కాన్సెప్ట్, వై నాట్ ఐ బికమ్ ది ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్, So here also, a case has been built up. You have some inductive logic where people have come up from lower ranks of the society to become the prime ministers of the country. Of course, without any disrespect or without any type of ulterior motives, we have also seen a chai wala can become a unchai wala. A unchai chai se unchai bhi milega. So that is the type of thing that we want. So cooperative federalism means it's not as if Maharashtra alone should prosper. Maharashtra also is not prosperous. All the districts of Maharashtra are not prosperous. Take only 4 districts of Maharashtra: Bombay, Nagpur, Pune, Aurangabad are some of these cities. And then the rest of the Raigad and others are as bad as Mahabubnagar. So the whole problem is when we can think of an equalizing factor. And you remember also in the Constitution what was happening was all resources were in the hands of the central government. Sir, kindly tell me if I exceed the time. Because time also is a resource and it cannot be exceeded. And in fact, one of the first sentences of Robbins is, life is short, there are only 24 hours in a day. So that is economics. Life is short and there are only 24 hours in a day. And we have only 20, 20, 20. 3 20s. So that's our plan. So my 20 is first 20. So first 20 cannot become 40. It cannot have a multiplier effect. So I shall, as far as possible, try to say that 20 is 20. But in any case, what we have to remember is, unless all the states are taken together, the strength of a team depends upon the weakest link in the group. The strength of a team depends upon the weakest link in the if there is an running race and if they ask me to also follow, they would be defeated. Because as things stand now, I cannot withstand their competition. So the problem is, there should be an equal level ground, equal leveling field. So unless that type of thing is there, naturally what happens is, some states begin to dominate. So the backward states have to be given some extra grants, some fillip, etc., even by the Finance Commission. And then the so-called forward states should be, of course, willing to sacrifice a portion of their things. But it doesn't mean that the progressive states should be allowed to sacrifice their progress and all that. They need not necessarily forego their resources. And therefore, there are several factors that go into the devolution of formula normally given by the Finance Commission. Now we are in the 14th Finance Commission. We expect the report to be out in a few days, most probably after the budget is presented, or along with the budget, there will be an action taken report also. So, inequality, geographical inequality, population-wise inequality, all these things are there. And if these things are not obliterated, there cannot be a cooperative commonwealth, there cannot be cooperative federalism and all these things. So, Finance Commission is supposed to be a unique institution in India, because whatever financial provisions have been incorporated in the Constitution remain, of course, stagnant, but to impart a type of flexibility to the constitutional provisions, Article 280 has been inserted, and Article 280 says that the President shall appoint a Finance Commission for every 5 years. This is a unique feature. Finance Commissions do not normally find a place in other places. Only Commonwealth. There are 2 or 3 federations, as you know, Canada, Australia, India, to some extent Pakistan, and the big states, of course, like Russia and USA are different. So wherever these federations are there, there is among these federations also, the unique formula, the unique institution of the Finance Commission, which is a creature of the Constitution under Article 280. But one good thing is, the Union government has been honoring the recommendations of the Finance Commissions, unlike at the state level. At the state level, what happens is, the state finance commissions do not normally, the recommendations of the state finance commissions are not normally accepted because, as I said, the grandson is born, but the grandson is not able to oppose or stand up to the father. The grandfather, of course, is willing to put money into his pockets, but the father picks up his pocket. So pickpocket is there. So in between. So if this happens, unless there is inclusive growth in this sense, in a different sense here. 11th plan talks about the weaker sections and all this, gender and all that. But here also, the smaller states also should be allowed to grow grociousness, just as that beverage fellow normally announces or proclaims. Grociousness, the ability to grow, this coinage of that fellow, whether it is Complan or whatever it might be. So that grociousness, the ability to inbuilt ability, the innate ability to grow, to resist all types of pressures and to go ahead, padandi munduku అనేటువంటి spirit కావాలి. If that is there, మీరంతా కూడా ఇంకా కూడా ముందుకు వస్తారు, IAS లో పాస్ అవుతారు. All the best to you. Anything of academic help, you are always welcome to talk to me. My phone number is with Subramanyam, and you need not hesitate. ఇందులో మొహమాటాలు అక్కర్లేదు, భయం అక్కర్లేదు. I am a commoner.
For a very enlightening and thought-provoking presentation. Now, I request Dr. B. Yarram Raj garu, who is presently Director Projects and Research Development and Research Services. He is the Regional Director of PRMA. He is a very distinguished banker turned economist and also a management expert. He had a wide experience. He was a professor in economics in the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy for some time, and he was Dean in Administrative Staff College of India. He was Director, Indian Institute of Economics and IPE, Hyderabad. He was Editor, Asian Economic Review. He authored about 14 books, and his book on growth resurgency is going to be released very shortly. So we are very grateful to Dr. B. Yarram Raj garu for having accepted our invitation, and I request him to give his presentation on sectoral growth. Incidentally, his book on the same subject is being released shortly. I hope you will be very much benefited. Dr. Yarram Raj garu.
All of you. Thank you very much, Dr. Subramanyam, for the brief introduction. Professor Kantarao garu, Professor Manohar Rao, and all of you. Very happy to be amidst you. Most of you are aspirants to civil services, and I glimpsed through your syllabus, and he posed me one question. In most of the countries, from agriculture, the manufacturing sector grows. After that, services sector grow. Whereas in India, when we took reforms, we jumped from agriculture to services. Why it happened? As we go along the growth story, you would come to know that. In fact, he made a reference to the change in the base year, consequent on which today we are a $2.1 trillion economy. And numbers are very elusive, but when you see another report, which has also been released very recently, of the United Nations, we have 300 million population of the poor. And the population of the poor of our country exceed the population of South Africa, and the billionaires of the country also exceed the billionaires of UK. So we have the rise of the poor and the rise of the rich, and which means that there is a lot of gap that is there between the poor and the rich. And we have a burgeoning middle class. That means middle class has been growing. One of the key indicators of growth in every country has been the growth in the middle class. And from round about 350 to 400 million population today in our country is this middle class. They can't go down to the poor, identify themselves with the poor. They can't go to the richer class because the richer class will throw them down. So that is why they are in the muddling middle. And all of us belong to that category. Those who are sitting here, we are of the middle class. And some may be of middle class from your sections also, but quite a few are also from the poorer sections. See, what exactly do you mean by this growth? Why people are talking of this growth? What is growth that is measured? How is this growth measured? We have a very poor measure throughout the world today. That is gross domestic product. It ignores many aspects in the economy. Can you tell me how many things it ignores? Illustratively, can any of you tell? What are the things it ignores? One? Louder? Competition from household? Women contribution to the household. Okay. Voluntary service. Some of the economic aspects also are ignored. No scrap dealer ever sells through an account. See, the entire economy of scrap economy is cash economy. It never gets into the GDP at any point of time. So there are many aspects that do not get into the GDP. But still, the world measures the growth in terms of GDP. Therefore, as part of the global economy, we also measure in terms of GDP. We compare ourselves with the rest of the economies, how we are growing. And this particular growth consists of different sectors. What are they? Primary, secondary, tertiary. All of you have read in the fundamentals of economics. What is primary? Agricultural sector. What is secondary? Industrial sector. What is tertiary? Services sector. Why not you call straight away agriculture, industry, services? So most of our books today, most of the reports today carry only agriculture, industry, services. They do not define in terms of primary, secondary, tertiary, excepting somewhere you will find in economic survey reports, primary, secondary, tertiary, and textbooks. So this agriculture, industry, services sector, the shifts have taken place in the country very vastly. From around 53% in 1951, we have moved to now 12% share for agricultural sector. Out of the GDP of this $2.1 trillion, we have got barely 12% coming today from agricultural sector, but roughly about 50 to 55% today, even today, depend upon this sector. And you have industrial sector where the contribution is very low. After all, when you are comparing industrial sector to other countries, we lag far behind. Our manufacturing sector is very weak. We have not been able to rise even to meet the entire domestic demand. there is a big gap between the supply and demand so far as manufacturing sector is concerned. That's why today the call is for the manufacturing sector to grow. What is Make in India slogan? Anybody coming into India, you make the goods here, sell the goods here. Why are all the countries looking at us? They are all looking at us because of the market. We are the biggest market. But today, is the market dictating? Yes. Today markets are dictating where to put your money. So it is here that attraction comes into picture. FDIs and their role, to which my friend Professor Manohar Rao will refer later to me, will unfold to you the magic of these FDIs. You know, a lot of people are showing interest with us to put money into the country today. For that, what happened, how it has come about? It has come about because the Prime Minister went on marketing our country. Like today, AP Economy Chief Minister and Telangana Chief Ministers are marketing the state. How they are marketing? They are marketing the state, telling that we are going to provide you excellent infrastructure. Come here, put your money. So what is the key figure, the key word there? Infrastructure. So what is important for any sector to grow? Infrastructure. That means sector-specific infrastructure must be existing as a precondition for growth of that particular sector. Are you clear? So what is the sector-specific infrastructure? Because I am not going to bore you with all statistics, figures and all that. Let us forget for some time about them. Because enough is enough. Because yes, service sector contributes more than 50%, all that you know, you are reading in your papers and books. So there is no point in that. So in agriculture, what is the infrastructure that is required for agriculture? For agriculture, what is the base? Soil. Therefore, if the soils are infertile, what is to be improved? Fertility of the soil has to be improved. Where the soil is infertile, how do you know? There must be a soil health card. Now, soil health cards are being introduced. Every farmer throughout the country will be given soil health cards in the next 2 years. That is the target that was declared yesterday. So, every farmer will get the soil health card. What does it indicate? It will indicate what are the strengths of the soil on which he is growing certain crops and whether that crop is suitable for the soil. As an example, I can tell you, for example, we have taken in large measure our farmers thinking that cotton is the biggest earner. They went in for cotton irrespective of what the soil condition is, what the water condition is, and they went in for growing cotton crop. As a result, what happened? They grew cotton, but it is not up to the optimum level. If it is not up to the quality that is required or accepted by the market, because cotton has to be accepted by the people who produce cloth. Ultimately, it has to produce yarn. Long staple cotton, short staple cotton, 2 varieties are there. Do we have a good mixture of those? No. Do we have good short staple cotton so that we can import long staple cotton and then make a good yarn and then produce cloth? No. So we don't have that capability. So cotton farmers today in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana have come to grief. Most of the suicides have occurred only in cotton growing area. Not in sorghum, not in paddy. A paddy farmer does not commit suicide. Right? So this factor you should keep in mind. Basic infrastructure is required, and in the agricultural situation in the country, most of the areas are not sufficiently irrigated. So we have more of rainwater, rain-dependent areas. So rain-dependent areas must have different type of cropping patterns. I have only limited rainfall, but I grow paddy. I look at God. That rain God does not come. He deceives me. What will I do? I keep looking at the soil and weep that nothing is coming. So ultimately he takes grass and sells to the person who owns cattle so that he gets cattle feed. grass for the cattle is available, not the paddy he wanted. So rainwater harvesting must be done. And whenever rain comes, he should be able to harvest that water, use it for limited cropping pattern, and the rest he should support it by different other activities. Because agriculture is not just agriculture. Agriculture includes dairy, fish culture, horticulture, and bee culture. So many things come into play, right? So agriculture consists of a variety of activities on which the farmer can. That means it is a diversified portfolio. Agriculture is a diversified portfolio. Many farmers in the past also, every farmer will have at least 2 he cattle and 2 she cattle, right? Out of the 2 she cattle, one is a cow, the other is a buffalo. Milk economy is a very strong economy with a farmer, because with how many, whatever be the number of children he has, cow's milk will be fed to the children and excess will be sold. Buffalo's milk will likewise, he will conserve a bit for his family towards curd,